Hey everyone, it's James George with Creative Beacon, and this week I'm going to show you the Perfect Effects 8 suite from On One Software. If you remember a week or two ago, I shared a free Photoshop plugin that I found, or extension that I found online that you could use to create all kinds of different effects. Well, that's what I'm going to show you today in this video because it's really cool and you can do a lot of really neat stuff with it, and I'm going to show you how to use it. So I have this image here that I've used before for, I think I used it for another tutorial. And so let's say that you want to apply some effects and filters to this. Well, you can go into Perfect Effects here. You'll have your own little panel. You can just go up there and go to Window, go to Extensions, and it should be in there. So once you've done that, you can go to Filters, and you have all these different options, but I just go ahead and open your image in Perfect Effects 8. So you just click that button. It should open up here. And what's cool is this extension has its own user interface. So you have this whole setup where you can go in and modify your image and apply effects to it, and you can see them in real time, which is great. And so you can see that it's initializing and it opens up, and you have this whole setup here. You have your layers just like you would inside of normal Photoshop, but you can layer your effects, and actually you can apply different blend modes and things like that to them. So you can via the blending options. So let's say now this is an empty layer. So in order to see something, then we need to do something to this layer. So let's say you wanted to apply vintage effects to it. Well, this will show you the different effects that you can apply to it. So let's say you want to give it some vintage color effects. Give it that dingy sort of yellow effect. That shows the whole effect here. And you can see that it's applied to this layer. And you can set the blending mode to normal, or you have all the blend modes that you would expect to have inside of Photoshop. See, you can actually apply it via multiply, and you get different results depending on the effect that you've chosen, the filter that you've chosen to get this effect. And so you can see that it gives you a preview of each and every look, and all you have to do is just hover over it, and you get an instant preview of what it does. This is great because you don't have to commit to something and then go back to it and be unhappy with what you've come up with. So I'm going to leave this as normal for now, and we're going to apply another effect to it. So let's say add empty layer, and we're going to apply a different effect to it. So let's close Vintage and do Texturizer. Let's say we wanted to add, like grunge vignette. You add that to it, and so now you have a gritty effect applied to your image. And you have all of the capabilities that you normally would inside of Photoshop. So you can actually lower the opacity. Let's say this was too much for you. You can actually just go ahead and lower the opacity of the effect. So it's just a light vintage grunge effect that you've applied as a texture in the background. You have all kinds of selections, light leaks, clouds. It just depends on what kind of effect that you're going for. This one is a rice paper effect, and that's really nice because it just creates this sort of subtle texture over the entire image. And so if you were going for a vintage poster effect, like a vintage call to action poster, this would be great for this kind of effect. And it's great because you can just layer effects on top of each other over and over and over again. And so we'll add another effect. I'm just doing this as an example. I may not necessarily do this, in a normal design, but I'm just showing you. They have borders. Borders are great because you can add, a grungy border effect, antique rounded. So let's say you want to mask out a border for your effect, emulsion transfer. And so you get that faded rough edge on there, which is a really nice effect. Let me see if there's any other ones that may sloppy border. You get this whole collection of border effects. Here's torn paper. So you get this whole torn edge vintage effect instantly without having to create any kind of masks or anything like that inside of Photoshop. It's just an instant effect applied to your images. So once you're done with this, let's say that you like how this is and you're ready to go. You can just go ahead and click apply, and it'll process everything and add it in its own layer called Perfect Effects. And it never affected your original background layer. You can see here that your original background layer is intact and untouched. So it follows, standard procedures, and you don't have to worry about ruining your photo or anything like that, because you can always go back and just apply different effects and things like that. I highly recommend this software. It's completely free, so you could just download and use it, install it as an extension with Photoshop. It's very cool, and you've seen the awesome vintage effects that you can create. And I did this in a matter of seconds while talking to you. Well, that's it for this week. I'm James George, and this is Creative Beacon.